Hi everyone, if you're watching this video, you've chosen bipolar disorder as your research topic in connection with Edgar Allan Poe. So you've already seen the video about how to use eLibrary. Right now I'm in eLibrary and I've searched for bipolar disorder. So I'm going to go through the three sources I've picked and show you how to get to them and take notes and do some selective highlighting, on those three sources for your research project. So first I search for bipolar disorder and I find this overview and I find Bipolar Affective Disorder, the Complete Home Medical Guide reference book. I think that's a pretty good place to start. So you should go ahead and pause this video, find the Bipolar Affective Disorder source from the eLibrary site and click Save to Google Drive. Don't forget, get the citation from the bottom and paste it in there as well. So go ahead and pause and do that now. Okay, here we are in Bipolar Affective Disorder from the Complete Home Medical Guide in the Google Drive. The next step is to read it and highlight things that you think remind you of Edgar Allan Poe. Again, you need to remember what you already learned about Edgar Allan Poe in the video and remember what you learned about him from the stories that you read. So, you go ahead and read it and I'll read it too, and then you can pause this video and when you come back to it, you can see if we highlighted the same thing. Okay, if you're back, you've probably read this and highlighted a few things you think are important. Let's see if we highlighted the same things. I picked inflated self-esteem, which may lead to delusions of great wealth, accomplishment, creativity, and power. I picked that because if you remember in our biography video, talked about Edgar Allan Poe feeling like he was better than all the other writers and he was very critical of them. So that to me means inflated self-esteem, thinking he was really the best. Talks about creativity, delusion of creativity. I mean, he actually was creative, but him thinking he was better than everybody else kind of reminded me of that. Lots of social inhibition. So if you remember, after Virginia died, he became sort of obsessed with finding another wife, and the video said he was writing the same letter to multiple women, seeking out another wife, and dating like more than one person at the same time, but sort of like really going after them aggressively is probably loss of social inhibition. He also was like drunk in public. If I remember right from the video, that seems to be a little bit of a loss of social inhibition. At times he or she may be aggressive or violent and may neglect diet and personal hygiene. I seem to remember the video saying that he was seen in public, again, drunk, which made him appear disheveled, sort of, not with it. I think he also might have been aggressive toward other people. There were certainly aggressive, kind of violent tendencies in his story. If you remember the Cask of Amontillado, some of that kind of came out, that aggressiveness came out in the story. So you could include that. Loss of interest and enjoyment. Now, again, we look to the stories. There isn't anything enjoyable. There's nothing fun happening in those stories. So nobody isn't having a good time. Everybody's dying. Also, hope for the future. Definitely concentrating on death. These would be the low parts. So the maniac parts, the self-esteem and the loss of social inhibition reminded me of Poe. And then the depression parts, loss of enjoyment and loss of hope for the future reminded me of Poe. So those were things I picked for this source. Now pause the video again and go find another source. Here we go. Okay, back on our eLibrary, I saw in the overview Bipolar Disorder from Ability Magazine. Doing a quick scan of this article, it seemed to me that I found a few things I might be able to use, so you click Save to Google Drive, copy your citation, pause the video, and we will take notes on it. Here I am in my Google Drive. I have pasted the citation, I have the article, and now I got to read it and do some selective highlighting, right? So you read it too, pause the video, and then come back and see if we found the same things. Okay, the things that I found that from this article that I thought were useful is this quote here that says bipolar disorder is generally a lifelong illness. Okay, so from what we know about Edgar Allan Poe's life, definitely had these periods of really uh, desperate and dark times. He suffered a lot, and it lasted his whole life. So he never was able to kind of achieve any type of happiness or normalcy. So the whole lifelong thing sparked me to think maybe that fits to him. I moved down in here and I found mania is a distinct mood episode different from the person's normal functioning, characterized by either euphoria, like an extreme high, or extreme irritability, or both. And I remember from the video it talked about when he was married to Virginia, there was sort of, him thinking that they were very extremely happy. And even in the letter he wrote to his aunt, there were these sort of extreme emotions. So that to me spoke of a little bit of mania. Then it goes on to grandiosity, an inflated sense of self-worth or ability that can reach delusional proportions. Talked about in the video how he felt he was better than everyone else as a writer, and he was very critical of other people. If you remember Cask of Amontillado, that was kind of based on a true story where someone insulted him. So that could go with his inflated sense of self-worth, like how dare someone else insult me type of thing. Then it goes on to say launch into multiple projects or unusual social or sexual interest. So after Virginia died, he had just extreme interest in finding another wife. You could also say it's unusually socially to want to marry your own cousin. The depressive side is the sad mood and the thoughts of death. So you could definitely go with the stories about that sadness, thoughts of death. He was definitely preoccupied with death. And then moving down here, it talks about delusions and false beliefs. If you remember, he talked about in his stories kind of this maybe belief that he could get back to or somehow connect to his dead wife, beyond life, beyond the grave. So the whole Annabelle Lee, sort of like this delusion that you could reconnect to someone when they were dead, and sleeping in the grave. And then in the oblong box, there was these, obsessions and delusions, maybe that you could sort of connect to someone or be with them when they're dead. So yeah, that's maybe a little bit of the symptoms that aren't normal. The rest of this article talks about drugs and treatments, which we obviously don't know, so we can skip that part. And if you've highlighted the things I've highlighted here, you would be pretty good on this source. Remember to pause this video and highlight as needed. We need one more source on bipolar disorder, so here we go. To find the last source, I was back on eLibrary and I just found what does bipolar mania look and feel like. Well, and I figured for wanting to know about symptoms, that could be useful to us. So I clicked Save to Google Drive. Copy and paste the citation, don't forget that. Pause this video while you do that, and then we'll go take notes on it. Here I am back in What Does Bipolar Mania Look and Feel Like? I got my citation at the top, and here's my article. So now we need to read it and do some highlighting. You go ahead and do that, and I'll do it too. When I see you again, hopefully you'll have some things highlighted. Here we go. Okay, if you're like me, you may have found only a few things in this one that you could use that connect to Edgar Allan Poe. One of them was talking about the exaggerated sense of self-esteem. This is similar to the other article, so if it's repeated, it's important, and it kind of reminds me of Edgar Allan Poe. It says here they are better at stuff, better writer, better artist, better than other people. And that connects to what he believed about himself as compared to other writers. I really don't know anything about his sleep, so I might have to do additional research to find out if he had a sleeping problem. As I continued reading this, it would talk about shopping. I don't know if he did that. But then it talked about things like extreme stress, sleep deprivation, drugs, and alcohol can prompt a manic episode. And I do know he had a life of extreme stress because of the losses he faced and um, the poverty he experienced. And I do know he used alcohol. So that reminded me of him. Pretty much I only found those two things. So unless we find out more about his sleep patterns, that's all I've got for this source. Okay, now you should have three bipolar sources in your Google Drive Pro eQuest Library folder, and you should have notes on them and all your citations. That'll be enough for this step.